Hi, Jim. It's Robin. It's all right. No, there's no worries. In fact, it looks like you tried calling me, and as I had told you, for some strange reason, my phone just doesn't ring sometimes. So I don't know what happened there, but I guess. Oh, really? Okay, that's interesting. 'Cause the thing is it didn't ring at all. So it's. I've tried. I went to the supplier and I asked them about it, and they didn't have a clue. So I'm just living with it. Anyhow, we got in touch. That's what counts. Here we are. Yeah. So, sorry? I'm doing okay. I'm reasonably happy and a little tired actually because I've been taking some late night, early morning astrophotography, Jupiter and Mars and the Moon and so on, pre-dawn. So I haven't been getting my catch-up sleep, but other than that, I'm fine. It sounds like it, yeah. Yeah. Mm. Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Sounds good. Yeah. How much time do you think we have initially for this phone call? I mean, I'm open myself. We can talk for 2 hours if you want, but I was wondering at your end. Right. No, but that's good. And it's good to know that, an hour or so is fine. I think that's probably, yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, I'll tell you right now, my line, it's breaking up a little bit. Not too badly, but I'm not getting like total clarity of what you're saying. I don't know, how do I sound? Right, right. It's just my cheap cell phone, and the poor service. It won't make any difference if you call me, I don't think. Do you want to try though? It actually might make a difference because I'm using a cheap calling card. So that service may make a difference. Do you want to call me again? Okay, I'll hang up and I'll let you call me. Right, bye. Hello. So far about the same, but we'll see. You were breaking up and yeah, it's still breaking up a bit. I guess it's just, modern technology. No, no, don't bother. It's okay. You're breaking up a little bit, but I think it's good enough, I mean, yeah, yeah. Yeah, so I did a little bit of homework on you, looking at, your moderator site again. I obviously looked at it before, but I refreshed my memory and I looked at your response to the UU Safety Net petition and so on. And I noticed, actually, your history in terms of the civil rights movement, which is interesting because I've been watching, of course, the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington, and no doubt you participated in commemoration of that. And I was just, thinking, if you were to take the principles of that and apply them to clergy misconduct of all kinds, then maybe we might get somewhere. And looking from, your background and everything, and based on, what you've said in your, in your election platform for running for moderator, totally besides what you said to UU Safety Net, I do think that you're probably the right person to hopefully try and resolve this matter. But I guess you said first you just wanted to listen compassionately, which is fine, and we can start with that if you want. Are there any questions that you have for me, or? Right. Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah. Right. I see. Okay. Really? Okay. Okay. Well, that's great experience. You know, and I noticed that. You know, I noticed. You know, that that was your work experience and so on. I thought, well, that's a good thing. You know, it certainly. I think, as I said, it really puts you as maybe, like I said, you know, in terms of who's available, you know, within the UUA structure, you're probably one of the best placed, you know, to deal with this mess. You know? So, and it is a mess. And I think you've obviously looked at clergy misconduct, you know, in a broader sense. And so I think you're more and more aware of you know, basically just the failure, if you want to use that term, of the UUA, to say nothing of individual congregations dealing with it in a responsible manner. You know, and right, right, mm-hmm, right, mm-hmm, mm-hmm, hmm, right, right. Okay, so I guess your main, right, 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 mm-hmm, 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 right, mm-hmm. Well, presumably in terms of Annabelle, she was speaking primarily of clergy sexual misconduct, I presume, yeah. And you know, this is where I'm coming from in terms of my own case, and in terms of a more general picture as well. My case does not involve sexual misconduct at all. It is purely of a non-sexual nature. Um, and I think it's fair to say that there's other misconduct of a non-sexual nature that occurs. And the response to clergy sexual misconduct by the UUA has been pretty pathetic, if you don't mind my using that term. And it's no better for non-sexual misconduct. In fact, I would say it's worse because they just don't take non-sexual stuff seriously at all. You know, they may deal with some cases of sexual misconduct, but if it's of a non-sexual nature, unless it's a minister plagiarizing the sermons of other ministers or something, or if it's a minister embezzling money or something, they just don't want to deal with it. They don't take it seriously, and they basically dismiss it and pretend there's nothing wrong. And that's certainly my experience, and I think it's safe to say that it's probably other people's experiences as well. And so one of the things that I would try to raise your consciousness to, and I'm working on this with Safety Net too, is that when it comes to misconduct, the UUA has to deal with the non-sexual stuff just as much as the non-sexual stuff. And to give you an idea, there's a range of sexual misconduct from low end. We won't say what that is. But, there's a low end and there's a high end. The high end is rape and pedophilia and so on. The low end is, let's say a minister patting the derriere of a congregant without her, wanting it. And these days it's verboten with the latest rules. So my point is there's a scale of non-sexual, there's a scale of sexual misconduct that starts at a lowish end in terms of what it is, and it goes up to pretty horrific stuff. Well, the same can go for non-sexual. You can have low-end non-sexual misconduct and then go up to some pretty high-end non-sexual misconduct. And the point that I'm trying to make here is that some of the higher-end non-sexual misconduct can be worse, far worse, than the low end of sexual misconduct. So it has to be taken seriously. And unfortunately, in my case, it wasn't particularly low end in terms of non-sexual misconduct. I'd even in some ways put it at the high end. I certainly hope it's the high end of non-sexual misconduct. And it just wasn't taken seriously at all. So that's where we are. And we've got almost 20 years now in terms of my own case where the UUA has basically pretended that the ministers involved, to say nothing of the congregations involved, did nothing wrong, and that they were either within their bounds of behavior or they were outside of them, and therefore outside of their role as a minister, and therefore, well, that didn't matter either. That's the two different rulings I got. It's like two almost completely contradictory rulings. And the point being is not only are they, basically whitewashing the clergy in question, but then it's the standard procedure of doing their best to intimidate a whistleblower, a complainant, into silence. And in my case, I've even had criminal charges brought against me. I don't know how up to date you are with the UUA's latest actions, but are you aware of the fact that they accused me of blasphemous libel? I see. This. Right. Process issues, right. Yeah, well, yep. Right, right. Well, there's some serious process issues. Yeah. Keep going, sorry. Yeah, no, I got that. I sort of interrupted you, but as far as process issues go, I will give you one very, very serious one that has not been responsibly addressed, and I brought it to the attention of the UUA board in the April 2010 board meeting, so more than 3 years ago now. There is no appeal process whatsoever for a complainant whose complaint is dismissed or found to be not valid or whatever. There's no appeal process whatsoever. And to me, this is just, I'll say unacceptable, to be polite. Other denominations, even, some little Christian sects that are probably smaller than Unitarian Universalism, have appeals processes built into their clergy misconduct procedures. They even have two-level appeals processes. In other words, you can appeal to this body, and if your appeal, for whatever reason, isn't satisfactorily to your, there's a second higher level of appeal. In terms of other denominations, which, judging from the name, I presume is pretty small, the ones I've seen. So what I'm getting at is, here's the UUA with 160,000 adult members, and for decades there has been no appeal process for complainants. So you send in your complaint, And if it's rejected, well, that's too bad. If you're not happy with that, well, there's no process. We're talking about process issues. There's no process to appeal, to try and fix the problem. And this is a huge, huge problem, and I think it has actually led to the UUA having a dismissive attitude to all kinds of clergy misconduct, including the sexual stuff, because nobody, as I said, no complainant, whether sexual or non-sexual, no complainant has an ability to appeal. Now the flip side of that coin, by the way, is that clergy do have an appeal process. There's a process where if a minister is defellowshipped, that they can appeal that defellowshipping to the Board of Review. In fact, it looks to me like the Board of Review, its sole purpose is to deal with appeals from clergy who have been defellowshipped. I don't think they have any other purpose other than that. So a minister can appeal being defellowshipped, but there's nothing at all for a clergy misconduct complainant, regardless of what the complaint is, either sexual or not, having any kind of appeal process. So right there you got a huge, serious process issue. And I don't know if you're aware of it, but I went down to Boston in April of 2010 with the intention of protesting outside 25 Beacon Street while there was a board meeting going on to call attention to the clergy misconduct in general and the various problems in terms of process issues. It turned out that it was Boston Marathon weekend. I thought, I was hoping to get some media attention to this too, and I thought, this is not a slow news day. My chances of getting some media coverage about this at this point in time are like kind of slim. So maybe I should rethink things a little bit. And what I did is, let's see if I can participate as an observer at the board meeting, and let's see if I can get a few points across. Now, I was there, I think, beginning on the Thursday, and the Thursday, it was not the actual meeting, or it might have been the Friday, but what I'm getting at is when I arrived, it was not the board meeting, which is on Saturday and Sunday. This was the day before, or even the day before that. But there were various, subcommittee meetings going on. And I saw that there was a subcommittee meeting for a group called Excellence in Ministry. I don't know if you've heard of that particular committee. You might know Jean Pupke, by the way, how do you pronounce her name? Do you know how you pronounce Pupke? Yes, yeah. Okay, we'll talk about her again later, but there was her and a few other people, and they were in a room in a building, I believe it wasn't 25 Beacon Street, I think it was a different building. Anyway, I just went up, and they were in a closed room, the door was closed, and I just opened the door, and I said, is it possible to sit in on this as an observer? And they said, yes, you can. So I sat down, and I was an observer. And I basically didn't say very much at all, because, I'm an observer. And then towards the end of the meeting, I asked, I said, what? Hello? Yeah, I don't know what happened. It just suddenly got a busy signal. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So I observed the meeting and I listened to what they had to say all about excellence in ministry. And the interesting thing actually is that clergy misconduct was not even mentioned in the whole thing. It's like it didn't exist. This was all about excellence in ministry. This was all about the and at the end, I just asked. I said, as an observer, am I allowed to make some observations? Can I say something here? I just politely asked, can I do this? And they said, yes, you can. And then I basically made the observation that I just told you. What do you know? You're talking about clergy excellence, and then clergy misconduct isn't even on your agenda. And it seems to me that if you're going to talk about excellence in ministry, well, you got to talk about the flip side of that coin, which is, lack of excellence in ministry and so on. Anyway, so I made that point. And then I decided, since that had gone reasonably well, and you can talk to Jean Popke about that, because I'm sure she'll probably remember it. I decided, well, let's try attending the full-blown board meeting and see what happens. And I wasn't even sure I'd be allowed to attend. I thought they might just say, sorry, Robin, we're not letting the Emerson Avenger in here. And in fact, as it happens, they did have an executive closed-door session before starting the meeting, which I don't know, but it's possible that they discussed whether or not they were going to let me in or not. Anyway, whether or not that was part of the discussion, I was allowed in as an observer. And I sat through, 2 whole days of board meetings. I don't know if you've ever sat through like 2 whole days of a yeah. I don't know how many times you've done it, but I did it, as an observer. All of them from last year. Okay, right. I understand that, as an observer, that's a very good thing. Actually, since you brought that up, did clergy misconduct ever come up? I'm not surprised. Continuing on, getting back to where I was coming from, so I sat in at the meeting. I sat at the back where the observers sit, where they sit. And up at the other end, there was President Morales, Jeannie Corder, other leading members, leading officials, and then the board sits on either side at opposite tables, as I'm sure you're aware. At least that was the configuration when I was there. And I said, basically, I had the intention of, just sitting there and listening, and I intended to speak up after 2 reports. One was the Excellence in Ministry report, and the other one was, of course, the Ministerial Fellowship Committee report. I intended to, say a thing or two after those reports were concluded. As it happened, there was a big kerfuffle at the time. We're talking April 2010 here, and the Morales administration had slashed the budget of the Committee for Appraisal. The Committee for Appraisal, they were about to start a project in terms of ministry, and the Morales administration had slashed their budget, if I'm not mistaken, from 35,000 down to 5,000. And so they were not happy about that. They were talking about that. And so when that was pretty well done, I decided, what, I'm going to say a thing or two about this, So I asked if I was allowed to speak. Yes, you can. So they gave me the mic. And I just said, there's a saying to the effect that politics is perception. That politics is, what you perceive, what you see. And I said, in terms of perception, I won't say anything in terms of what's actually going on, but in terms of perception, it looks like you're slashing their budget because you don't want them to do something. It looks like you don't want them, doing an appraisal of ministry. That's what it can look like. So you might want to rethink. That was my point. I probably made 1 or 2 other points, but that was the main one. As far as it goes, it is my understanding that board meetings, I believe they at least now, in the most recent years, they're recorded, right? Yeah. So I'm not sure whether or not the April 2010 one was, but I think it probably was. And I would actually suggest to you that you get a hold of that recording and listen to, if nothing else, what I said and how it was responded to. If you could do that, I've already told you, your safety net, that they should do that, because I made some pretty serious points. Anyway, what happened is, I basically sat and was quiet and listened and, saw the tension between the board and the Morales administration and all the juicy stuff that went on with that, until it got to the Excellence in Ministry thing. And they did their report, and they were finished. And when they were finished, I made my point that I'd already made in their initial committee meeting. You know, how can you talk about excellence in ministry without addressing the clergy misconduct issue? And there was another minister, the male one, whose name I just don't remember right now, and I haven't bothered to like refresh my memory. And he piped up and he said,